But I now kind of want to focus on if you're going to do like a deposit or if you're going to do a swap. So let's create a folder called actions. And I think the easier use case is probably the deposit. So in this README, we have an example of a very basic stake interaction. I want to use this, and I think that the base transaction, which I'd like to focus on, is doing a deposit on the Aave pool in Arbitrum, or sorry, on Base. So what we're going to need to change is we're going to need to add, so before the quote, we want to add, let's comment this out because this is our payment use case. But we want to basically create this function that creates this message that defines what we want this Aave deposit on Base. So let's define the Aave contract. I know this isn't the best practice on where I'm defining this, but just want to make it easy as we go through this. And one major update when you're including transactions on the destination chain is you need to set the recipient. So like in the previous transaction, our recipient was the EOA address that we were receiving that transfer to on the destination. But with anything that includes cross-chain transactions, we're sending the transactions to this multi-call handler, and this is our default contract. We've audited this. It basically allows you to send an array of transaction objects that are going to be executed. So we set, this is that address that we set. So we have the Aave contract and the recipient. We're going to then, I think, just create, let's go over to deposit. Let's create this deposit message. And we can kind of leverage what we have here. So I'm just going to copy this. This is what we want our function to return. Okay, so now we have the Aave contracts. We'll import address. And so let's start with the approval. This is including an unwrapped transaction, but what we actually want since we're using USDC and our first transaction is going to be approving the Aave contract. So what we actually want is we're going to want the USDC address, and that's what we'll use as the target for the approval. Here I have this generate approval call data. So this is basically it's a helper function. It's going to allow us to generate the call data for the approval very easily. So it takes in the spender and the amount. This is the ABI for the approved call. It just generates the call data that we're going to use to pass. So let's change that, and We also want to pass I guess the first thing we want to pass is the user address. So we're going to use the user address for multiple reasons, but the main one is we want the fallback recipient. So if the approval and the deposit were to fail, this fallback recipient basically would get the funds transferred to them on base. So a huge advantage of that is you don't have to wait for like hours or anything, or your funds aren't stuck. They're basically, if the calls revert, you get money forwarded to as if it was just like a standard bridge transaction. So what we need to now is to pass the spender and the amount. So we're also going to add the amount as an argument, and so the spender is going to be the Aave contract, and then we'll use the amount. So this is like a really this update function simplifies this whole process, because when so right here we're using, like, this is the input amount, so before fees, so like we're using 15 USDC right here. The problem is, like, we're not actually going to receive 15 USDC on the destination chain. We're going to receive 15 minus the fees, so like 14.93 or something USDC. So this update function will update the call data based on the updated output amount after fees. So this makes it much easier to not have to like create this function multiple times where you're generating a message used for, like, if you're using the API, you have to generate a message to get the fees, and then you have to generate another message to be used for the actual deposit. This simplifies this process significantly, but also if you don't include this, the transactions will revert on the destination chain. So this is very important. And then for the second transaction, this is where we actually want to do the deposit. So we're going to call, the target's going to be the Aave address, and we need to create another helper function that's going to generate deposit call data, and it's going to take in, I guess it'll take in the output token, the user address, and the amount. So I actually just copied this from our docs that I can share. But this is, so this is the Aave supply function. It takes in the asset, the amount, on behalf of, and the referral code. This on behalf of is really important because the relayer is actually going to be executing this transaction on behalf of the depositor on the origin chain. So you want to make sure that this user amount is actually receiving the deposit. It's being deposited on behalf of that user and not the relayer. So that looks good. So we're going to do a very similar thing as we did above. So this call data is going to be used for getting that initial quote. So it needs the output token. It needs the user address, and then also the amount. And because this was an unwrap where they were then using the ETH to stake, we're using USDC, so this value should be 0. This is updating the value. We want to update the call data, and we basically want to call this function, and instead of using the initial input amount, we want to use this updated amount. So I think this looks good now. At high level, we just created the call data or the transaction for the approval, and we created a transaction for the actual deposit. And then, yeah, so let's go back. And now we want to actually create, we actually want to create the message that we can use for the quote. And then we want to create it so that we can use it for, to actually execute the transactions. So here, create deposit message. We have, we do not want to use the recipient. We want to use, so the deposit message, the user address. So let's use the wallet client. Or actually, okay. So we need to bring the wallet client up. We'll just put it here with the Across client. So it's actually, wallet .account.address. So that will be passing the actual address from the wallet client that's making the deposit. We'll include the Aave contract as the address, the USDC address, and then the input amount. So now we can come down here and we can add the deposit the deposit should be deposit message. I created Crosschain messages. Okay, so now we added the Crosschain message. So we have these deposit. Let's create a type. And what we want, we can use this Crosschain action type from the SDK. Actually, it should be app SDK. And this should be Crosschain action. So export. So we're going to have this actions array, which is just, and we'll have the fallback recipient, which is just going to be the address. So we're going to use this type. We're just going to make this so we don't actually need this to be a promise. All right, perfect. So now we have our deposit. Okay, so now we should be good on our deposit message. Let's just change this to Crosschain message. Okay, now we have a quote. We did specify the multi-call handler as the recipient, so we'll include that in the quote. Let's comment this out while we get the quote. We can actually, Okay, so this is going to get us a quote, including so we can see now we have this message that's being included in the deposit, and that includes this cross-chain message that we created, and it's encoded. And then once that bridge transaction happens, this message is decoded, and these transactions are executed on behalf of the user. So we can just get rid of that for now. And we will uncomment this so that we can actually execute one of the transactions. So since we're not modifying anything, just use the quote.deposit. And that all looks good. So yeah, let's execute our transaction. The deposit worked. Same issue with the RPC on that destination chain, but here we can still just go to Arbitrum. We'll go to our address. We can see this deposit was made 18 seconds ago. Yeah, we transferred deposit 15 USDC. Now if we look at base, we should see so now we can see that, yes, so this deposit was made into Aave, and we received this Aave base USDC. If you look at the logs, you can see, yeah, the fill. We can go and see, yeah, this is the supply call we made. So yeah, everything looks good.